Ada Babineaux with the San Antonio Black International Film Festival, and we are so delighted to bring you an award-winning filmmaker, curator, writer, Miss Shola Lynch. She started out on Sesame Street at the age of 2 to 6, and then went on to do great things as an archivist, as a filmmaker, now curator with the Schomburg Museum in New York, and still working with her production company, REALSIDE Productions. She's an award-winning American filmmaker, writer, like I said, curator, best known for the feature documentary Free Angela, All Political Prisoners, and the Peabody Award-winning documentary that you just saw, Chisholm 72, Unbought and Unbossed. So we'd like to welcome her to the San Antonio Black International Film Festival. We're actually doing this between edits, so we're gonna have a short interview, but we appreciate your time, Shola. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's been a minute. It's been 20 years. So how relevant is this film today, especially in this crazy political climate that we're in?
Well, the film is relevant to me in part because Shirley Chisholm is in it and you get to know her and you get to feel her fiery spirit. And I think that translates beyond politics. I find that her words resonate with me like she's become part of my family. We were never family, but she's become part of my family. But in terms of the political context that we're in, her words ring so true. And the way she looked to participate in new ways is absolutely relevant. But the game keeps changing. What she did in 1972 is not possible today because she raised money in a grassroots way. She used her savings as a school teacher. I'd like to know how many school teachers out there have savings to be able to spend on a campaign. The rules in terms of how votes are collected, the lowest threshold in terms of delegate votes has changed. So the rules get changed all the time to keep people who out, like Shirley Chisholm, And so we have to know the rules and be engaged and be active beyond voting. Voting is the minimum, people.
Oh, yeah. How was it that this even came to your 23-year-old mind 20 years? I mean, you were like 23. Like, how did you discover Shirley and just move it forward to meet her and get involved with this film project?
Sure. I had been working in film for a number of years. I'd been working with Ken Burns, and we were doing, Frank Lloyd Wright, The Great American Architect, A Man Not of Color, the Jazz series, again, men of color. The women's stories were kind of put to the side. So I said to myself, it's really easy to criticize other people's work. And I challenged myself to make a film. And her birthday was announced on NPR. And it was the fact that she was the first Black woman elected to Congress. They didn't even mention her run for president. And so when I went to my bookshelf to refresh myself, and Paula Giddings, When and Where I Enter, if you have not read that book, please read that book. In the margins, I had written as a freshman my response to Shirley Chisholm's run for president. And I'm embarrassed to repeat what I wrote. So I won't.
No, don't be.
In my mid-20s then, I knew that was the story, and she was still around to tell it. And I think that we wait till people pass. And so to have her be participating in telling her own story is huge. And the film has had this life in schools and screenings across the country since it was premiered at Sundance in 2004. It's inspired several narrative adaptations, including the most recent one, which I didn't have anything to do with, but
I was going to ask you about that.
No. But her story is so inspiring. And what I hope people take away after watching the film is a sense of her, and then a sense that she's part of their family. So, her words ring in their lives.
You got to go reflect back, but when you first met her and brought this to her, how was that for you, your interaction and just bringing this to fruition?
Listen, when I did this, it was the late 90s, and she was written out of political history in a certain sense. She was an also ran. There was a bit of embarrassment about her run for president. And so she didn't want to talk about it. She's like, I'm not sure I want to bring all of that up. It was a really difficult time. You know, she was thinking about the Black political establishment, mostly men, not supporting her, the way the women also fell back in a certain sense. And she was left with a huge tax bill, and the government, you know, it was a bit of a mess. And so she was reluctant. And what changed her mind ultimately is when I said, Mrs. Chisholm, you are a teacher. And you know that if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And we will lose your voice. That's when she took a breath and she said, okay. And she allowed.
You changed the course of history by convincing her. Yes.
Listen,
Yes.
you know, we have so many stories about us, particularly as Black women and women of color, people of color, that get dropped out of the general narrative of American history. But don't be fooled. We were there, we were participating, we were doing things, and it really is up to us to go back and unearth those stories and tell them in dynamic and relevant ways.
You know, it was so nice when I saw the clip of her doing that speech. I saw homeboy Percy Sutton in the background, so it was great to know that he was there supporting her. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the Jessies and all the people that were with the King movement were, but it was good to see Percy Sutton there, you know, having the Malcolm X connection in history. And yeah, that was awesome to see.
No, Percy Sutton was a real stand-up guy, gentleman, politician, and he was there for her. And I will say that she definitely influenced what happened later, and then Jesse Jackson's run in '84, and he's talked about that. Setting that example, you know. But it was difficult to be the first and a woman with such style and flair.
And someone who, I mean, her parents are from Barbados. She was born here though, in the U.S., right? But her parents and grandparents everybody's Barbadian.
Yes, and she spent a number of years with her grandmother after being born here in the States as a young child, and I think the Caribbean ways were part of who she was. But she was a Brooklyn gal, right? And she went to Brooklyn College. You know, you can't take it. And she understood Brooklyn politics. You know, you can't take that
part.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And also to know her father was a Garveyite. That was like, wow. Just the legacy that she follows from her parents and grandparents was just you know.
Well, not only a Garveyite, so had a sense of Blackness, Black culture, but also a union man. And I think that was really where she gets a lot of her sense of fairness from listening to him and his colleagues talk political shop. That was her first entree into politics, I think.
Well, what was the major lesson or fact that you learned in making this film about her, or just being in her presence? I know she has a lot of wonderful quotes. You know, if you don't get a seat at the table, bring a folding chair, stuff like that. But what was just something that just stuck to your core?
You know, the main thing for me is I couldn't believe how much I underestimated her in my first reading, right, in Paula Giddings. Like, why would you do that? Why would you run for president? And what gets left out of her narrative is not that she did this for a political reason or for publicity, right? What gets left out of the narrative is that she had a strategy, a political strategy, that if people had supported her, could have actually won. She was running in primary after primary, collecting delegates because there was no minimum threshold for delegates, right? You could win 1%, 2% of the vote, you could win those delegates. She was going to the convention with 100 delegates in a tight race between three frontrunners. Those 100 delegates could be the difference between one of the nominees winning the nomination, right? one of the candidates winning the nomination. And
Mhm.
she understood that as political leverage. So when we say, oh, she just did it for publicity to say the time has come, it underestimates her intellect and her strategicness and, in fact, her brilliance.
Yes.
Sit in that. Mic
Mhm.
drop.
Mhm. No, serious mic drop. Serious.
That's
But you
it.
know, she lost against that Senator George McGovern. So you know, it's so bizarre because her words speak so much to what we are, the vile political environment that we're facing now with the Trump, running everything. I mean, I could just see her now dealing with this BS. I could see it, you know?
And I guess the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we going to give up on our political system, or how much are we going to engage? And it is really up to us to
Yeah.
make changes. And by us, the great citizens of the United States of America, not always the most rabid, extreme voices, like we need the regular folk up in the mix. And she represented that and justice and equality and was unafraid to speak out.
Unapologetically proud of her blackness
Yes.
and her womanhood. Yeah, she was just, when you say phenomenal woman, she was just that.
Yes.
All of that.
Unbought and unbossed.
Even
If
that campaign. I mean, it's like, ah.
if that is the only thing you take away from her, it is that phrase, because it fits her, unbought and unbossed, right? And she did it with strength, but also levity and confidence. Her posture was not, although she was often presented in the media as angry, her posture was not that she was much more. And she had a husband that supported her.
Mhm.
She had a political group that supported her. That she didn't do this alone. She did this in with her tribe. With her tribe, she built a
Mhm.
tribe, and
Mhm.
I think that's important to remember also, that we don't have to be alone, right? We can create our work family, our family, our political family, and we can do it together.
Yeah. Yeah. That is what we have to take away from this, because that is so true. Um, I want to find out what projects you're working on now, because I know we pulled you from the editing room. What
Yes.
projects you're working on now? Because I know there was a FloJo coming. Is that something that you're working on, or what
I
specifically?
am still trying to work on that. She is the fastest woman in the world still, but she's so controversial that I'm having trouble finishing that project. But I am finishing two projects. One is for Apple. It's called Number One on the Call Sheet: Black Leading Women in Hollywood, and it is about our stars. And it is turning out to be a beautiful film. So
I can't
hope
wait. I
you all
can't
look out
wait.
for that. And I am also in the beginning of production on a film on Reverend Jesse Jackson. So look out for
Great.
you.
Great.
Always making, always telling stories. That is my mission.
Okay. That is an important mission. And thank God you found your passion and you are pursuing it in life. That is awesome.
Thank you. And then the only thing I'll say is Chisholm 72 Unbought and Unbossed is still streaming. I have it out there. It's on Amazon and on Apple. And so if you love the film, don't forget to tell your friends and your nieces and nephews and grandkids, etc., to see the real Shirley Chisholm.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure you said you weren't involved in the production of the Shirley, the one that's coming out on Netflix, but I'm sure they referred to your film. They had to have. They had to have.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes. They were probably inspired by it.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been involved, but unfortunately, that's not always the way the world works, right?
Yeah.
So we move on, and I think the documentary speaks for itself in terms of how it introduces you to the context of the '70s, the '72 campaign, but also to Shirley Chisholm as a human being, in her intellect and her heart and her agency. And so I can only hope that those are the things that are reflected in the narrative. But I was not part of it.
No, no, don't hope it's an important piece. That documentation of just her and the experiences that you have will just that's the ultimate. That is the ultimate.
Exactly. Exactly. So as people are watching that narrative, I would say go and watch the documentary. And that's why I keep it out in the world. Keep getting revisiting and visiting with Shirley Chisholm.
Mm-hmm. So how can people get,
by the way, it's Mrs. Chisholm or Mrs. C. She did not like to be called by her first name. That was a no-no.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. You learned that quickly, I'm sure. You're like, wait, correction. But how can people get in touch with you? Can they go to your website?
Yep, sholalynch.com. You can go to my website. There are all kinds of links there to a lot of the work that I've been doing. I've been doing some shorts for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, of which I'm a member, and other projects. So you can keep track of my work there. The links to the films are there. You just have to click.
And REALSIDE Production is your company. That's the company.
REALSIDE Productions, keeping it real on the real side.
No, I love it. I love it. Well, Shola, I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate this time. I know you're busy. I can't wait to see other works. I will be following your website to stay in touch with you. We are in San Antonio. For me, it's always about keeping history alive, culture alive. And you know the kind of stuff in Texas we got to deal with. So it's a struggle, but we continue. We fight on because of people who've left legacies like Shirley Chisholm and yourself as a filmmaker. It's very inspiring. So thank you. And I wish you so much luck.
Thank you for what you do. I appreciate it. And I would be remiss if I don't shout out the Lady Longhorns, of which I was one many years ago. But
yes, the track star, right? You were track. That's awesome.
But thank you for what you do and keeping Shirley Chisholm's legacy alive, also by screening the film. And yeah, folks, go out, watch it, share, discuss.
Right. Thank you, Shola. Take care. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.